We're going to graph demand today, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about it. First off, just so you know, I'll be reading and using the written graphing instructions. These have 3 steps. The tab you're currently on for graphing demand will only have the first 2. We'll introduce the third one when we get to equilibrium. I'll also be using the non-price determinant list for demand, so you can certainly look at that list as it exists on your current Canvas tab. This is a basic demand curve, and what you have here on the y-axis, you can see where we labeled P. That stands for price, so this would be all the different prices of a good. Down here on the x-axis would be quantity demanded, so how much of a product are people willing and able to purchase at these given prices. And if you were to have a demand schedule in front of you, we would use the information in that to plot point out this curve. You can see that it slopes down and to the right. That is because of the law of demand, which shows an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. So therefore, we have kind of a downward slope, because when price increases, the quantity demand for a good decreases. And when prices decrease, the quantity demand for a good increases. And so that is the slope. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a few problems and just kind of work them here for you and kind of show you the way that you're going to actually go through the graphing demand worksheet that you have in front of you. So the problems I work may be slightly different, but they're going to be worked the same way. And so what step 1 says on your graphing instructions is to read the word problem that you're working and then to ask one question. What item are we supposed to graph? And that item, whatever the answer is to that question, will tell you the product. And we're going to put that in box 1 here. And then what you would do then is ask a second question. Once you know the product, you would say, did the price of that item that we're graphing change in the problem? There's a yes answer or a no answer. If you answer yes, then we're dealing with just a change in quantity demanded, which means price is the only thing changing, which means we are in a scenario with the term ceteris paribus, meaning all things are held constant. The only thing changing in the problem is price. Therefore, all these plot points that develop this line are accurate, and when price changes, we just need to simply move to the new point that corresponds with the changing price to get the new quantity demanded. If something besides price changes and you answer no, did the price change, then that means something besides price, a non-price determinant, is having an effect. And that is going to cause us to shift the entire line, meaning the price, the good at every price level is changing its quantity being demanded, which means what we plot pointed here is no longer accurate. And because of whatever the non-price determinant is, we would either shift it to the right if there's an increase in demand, or we would shift to the left if there's a decrease in the total demand, the quantity demanded at every price level. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and read this first one, and it'll start to make sense as we go through it a little bit more. It says the price of steak increases. What happens in the market for chicken? So when I ask the question, what item are we supposed to graph, it clearly asks us what happens in the market for chicken. And so in space 1 over here, I have put the word chicken so that we know what we are graphing. Okay, so now what we're going to do is ask the second question. Did the price of the item we're graphing, chicken, change? So when I go back to my problem and it says the price of steak increases, what happens in the market for chicken? I can say that no, the price of chicken did not change in that problem. And so when you answer no, your instructions say you will have to draw a shifting second curve. We're dealing with a change in total demand. That means the quantity demand is changing at every price level. And because of that, we're going to then look at our non-price determinant list to see which of those matches what's happening in the problem. So if you look at your list, a change in income, and I could go back to that problem and say, well, it didn't mention anyone's income. Was it a change in consumer expectations? That's usually about the future, and we always graph what's happening now, but it didn't talk about a future change. It said the price of steak increases. It's happened. what happens in the market for chicken. So they're asking about now, not the future. It's not discussing a change in demographics. This could be a breakdown on how we describe people, gender, ethnicity, religious beliefs. A lot of times products might be tied to those sorts of things. Age might be another one, but that's not being mentioned here, and neither is population size, which is also a form of a demographic. It's not talking about a change in consumers' tastes or anything due to advertising. So this isn't a new fad or trend. And the last one is a change in the price of a related good. Now that one matches. Okay, and it says here either a complement or substitute. In this case, it's a substitute good. When the price of steak increases, the law of demand says price increases, the quantity demand for steak will decrease. So if you were a shopper and you can no longer afford steak and you happen to like steak, you might at this point then begin looking for a substitute good. Okay, this would be the substitution effect we talked about. So we're going to go with that. Once we know that it's changing the price of a related good, then we can work the problem. Now, as it said, because we answered no, the price of the original thing we were graphing, chicken, did not change, we will be shifting this curve. So we go back to the problem, and we draw this graph exactly as you see it, and then we ask ourselves the question, when the price of steak increases and people buy less steak, are they more or less likely to demand chicken? And because it's a substitute good and it would be cheaper than steak at this point, we would say yes, they are more likely to use it as a substitute good, which means the quantity being demanded at every price level is going to increase. And so what we're going to do is we're going to shift our curve. And so I'm going to pick a pen here and kind of show you this. But what you're going to do is you're going to go to the right. We're going to draw a parallel line. Okay. I'm going to label that D2 because it's the second demand line. We can see that. And then I'm just going to simply draw an arrow. Sorry about that. I'm going to draw an arrow that indicates the direction that we are shifting so that I can see that there is an increase. Now I'm saying to the right, and I know the arrow kind of looks up. You could actually do it more like this, and it would still have the same effect. So it is shifting to the right, which means there's an increase in demand in this particular problem. Okay, I want to do one more. This would involve a price change. This actually is on your instruction sheet, or actually on your worksheet that you're going to work. It says Wrigley Gum changes the price of gum from 25 cents to 50 cents. What happens in the market for Wrigley Gum? We're going to ask the same questions. What item are we supposed to graph? And in this one, it is Wrigley Gum. Then we're going to ask ourselves the second question. Did the price of the item we're graphing, Wrigley Gum, change in the problem? And the answer is yes, there is a price change. It went from 25 cents to 50 cents. So we need to write the variable as change in price. So your variable is either going to be change in price or it's going to be change in non-price. And when it's non-price, we looked at the list. But when it's change in price, just simply put that. And then what we do then is we will then graph the problem. Okay, and so go ahead and draw this. We do not know all the different prices of gum or the different quantities. What we do know, though, we will label. And so if we get our pen back, this would be 0. And we know that the original price of gum was 25 cents. So 25 cents will be more than 0. So I'm just going to pick a point here, and I'm going to call that 25 cents. Okay. And I don't know the quantity that was being purchased. This would be the first price. So I'm going to put price 1, P1, there. And if you were to do a dotted line out to the demand curve to find this plot point where it strikes the curve, okay, be there. And if we went straight down with our dotted lines, this would actually be the quantity being demanded for gum at that original price. So I'm going to put QD1 because we don't actually know the original price. Now, the new price of gum is 50 cents. It's a little bit higher, so we're going to put higher up on the y-axis, 50 cents. And we're going to do the same thing with the dots. Okay, so now we're here. And if you go all the way down, we're going to label this quantity demanded to. Okay, so this is the new quantity being demanded for gum. And all we're going to do then is check it with the law of demand to see if this makes sense. So when the price goes from 25 cents to 50 cents, price went up. The quantity demand went from quantity demand 1 back towards quantity demanded 2, back towards 0, so it's getting smaller, so quantity demand decreased when price increased. And that's what we see in the law of demand as well. Or you could say we went from quantity demand 1 back up here to quantity demand 2 at this point. And even though it looks like it's moving up, we're actually decreasing or moving down the demand curve, because we are measuring it not by direction, but we are measuring it against the quantity demand on the x-axis here. So that, make sure you don't get confused when you're talking about supply and demand. We always want to talk about an increase or decrease, not so much in terms of up or down. Okay. So that is how you do a price change, and you saw how to do a non-price determinant where we increased it. Now if you were to decrease it, let me show you that. Alright, so when you decrease it, you would do the parallel line when it's a non-price determinant this way. Okay, just to show you that. But the big thing is go through the steps, follow those steps exactly. Ask yourself those 2 questions that are in the steps, and then you can make determinations accordingly. If you have any questions as you graph demand and the particular problems that you have on your worksheet, feel free to contact me through Canvas, and I'd be happy to help you.